Okay, I think I'm gonna kick us off. I'm Beth Apianis, JPL, and I'm really pleased that you're joining us today for our Women in Technology event number 2, How to Be an Ally. Just some comments. Advocating for women in technology is core value of Innovate at UCLA, and we continue to build programs that help enable and empower more women in tech fields, specifically in leadership positions. Just for those of you who may not be aware, I'd like to reiterate Innovate at UCLA mission, which is to inspire business innovation and research partnerships with emerging technologies. As a member-based organization hosted at UCLA for over 45 years, Innovate at UCLA has a diverse number of programs designed specifically to benefit executives and professionals within technology organizations. Members also have had an opportunity to participate in UCLA applied research projects, student hackathons, and tech boot camps. We have professional networking opportunities, professional education programs led by renowned tech leaders in enterprise organizations, CIO exchange events, and our annual Executive Leadership Awards dinner. Members have also participated in other items driven by innovative student teams. Today's topic is critically important, and I'm so pleased, we are very pleased to have such a distinguished panel of speakers. I'd like to introduce our moderator, Vishakhi Lahoti, Director of Data Warehousing and Analytics for the Aerospace Corporation. I'll pass it off to you.
Thank you so much, Beth. And I am honored to be the moderator here at today's panel. I am Vishakhi Lahoti. As Beth mentioned, I am a director for business analytics at the Aerospace Organization. But I also wanted to give a quick introduction. I have been in the engineering, manufacturing, healthcare, and now in aerospace industries. I have been a design engineer. I have been a process improvement consultant. I have been an analytics nerd and a manager. And I feel like this topic, allyship, is very close to my heart because at every point in my life, I can look behind and see all the allies that have helped me. And through my journey in my professional and even my personal career. So without further ado, what I'd like to do is say thank you to all the panelists who are here. I'd like you to do a quick introduction of yourselves, then starting with Amanda Bailey.
Hi, everyone. I'm Amanda Bailey, Vice President of Global Analytics at Activision Publishing in Santa Monica. I too started as an analyst a couple of decades ago, and this topic is near and dear to me as it's helped me through my career growth.
Thank you, Amanda. Colleen.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Colleen Rogers. I've been in IT for over 20 years, implementing technology-enabled solutions for a variety of clients in justice, public safety, healthcare, and third-party logistics. I too started as a developer, which led into portfolio management and ultimately leadership positions, strategizing, directing delivery. And it's a really pleasure to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Colleen. Derek.
Hi, everybody. This is Derek Cotton. I'm with Capital Group. I run our campus recruiting programs here. I've been recruiting for about 16 years. And that's all post-MBA, and I've been in financial services the entire time. And pre-MBA, I ran a bond desk and private client desk at both Lehman Brothers and Merrill Lynch. So allyship's been very important to me my entire career.
Thank you, Derek. And last but not least, Garrett.
Hi, everyone. Delighted to be here. Garrett Boss. I'm with Fox Corporation. Been with Fox for the last 4 years. Prior to that, was with 21st Century Fox for 15 years. Really excited to be here. Very excited to talk about allyship and mentorship and in women in tech.
Thank you so much. Let me bring it back to our discussion today. I know all of you who have joined today are spending your lunch hour with us. We want to capture the big stories, the big ideas, the big questions you have around allyship. And in the next slide, you'll see a couple of notes about both allyship and mentorship. We are going to talk about both. We're going to ask that you also contribute to this conversation by putting in your questions in the chat as you hear us all talking about it. We hope to cover most of the questions as we go on with the panel today, but let's think about what allyship means to all of us. Do we consider ourselves allies? Do we consider ourselves needing allies? Who needs allies? Do women need allies? Is it only for people who are at the lower rungs of their professional and possibly their personal careers? Is it different from mentorship? Who's responsible? And so all of these questions, I'd like to start by posing to each one of these panel members. And the first would be to say, do we consider ourselves an ally? Do you consider yourself an ally? To my panelists, starting with Garrett. And
thank you, Vishaki. Yeah, why do I consider myself an ally? I think that what I find interesting is in technology, we're in a unique position to build bridges across an organization. Usually we're brought in to help solve problems between groups across different departments to find, the best solution to drive a particular goal. And so it's just sort of innate, I think, in a lot of folks as we manage and roll out and deploy new systems. We have to look at processes and look at the organization and look at things holistically. So it's within, I think, a lot of people within tech's nature to be a natural ally. And I think just getting things done across an organization requires building bridges, making partnerships, being an ally with folks, helping folks as they need help, requesting help as you need help. And lastly, I would say that as I've grown in my career in terms of leadership responsibilities, I've always been very keen of to keep an eye on track what I don't know, right? And track my unknown unknowns, so to speak, right? And so having a mentorship framework and thinking, I think, is really important in order to get different perspectives. It's always a mutually beneficial relationship as I take on mentorship roles throughout the organization. So,
thank you. I'd like to pose the same question to Derek. Do you think yourself as an ally, or is there a story that you'd like to share with us about your allyship?
Well, as being a member of an underrepresented group, while also being a leader, you're naturally aligned to allyship. The number of allies I've had in my professional and personal life I'll take up the whole hour telling you guys stories, but I will say that it's imperative. There are more official allies, and they're just the unofficial allies you're going to have the opportunity to come across in your life. And you may not even realize that you're being an ally, but there are opportunities that surround us every day. And it's important that we start to recognize those so that we can maximize the potential that we have as people, and realize where we might need some allies to help us in our career and even in our personal lives. So the opportunities are all around us, I would say that. And then, to the mentorship piece, there are formal mentorships and informal mentorships. I think that the key is to understand what you want out of any relationship, like a mentorship, to understand that, and then to actively bring things to the table, because that mentor, it's not a one-way street. They're getting things from you, and they expect you to be an active participant in that process. And if you're not, then it turns into more of like educational opportunity, which, while may be valuable, is not really what a mentorship is all about. It should be a collaborative environment where ideas are passed really in both directions.
Well, Derek, we may not have the whole hour, but I hope to capture as many stories from you as I can. All right, same question for Amanda. Do you consider yourself an ally, or is there a story of allyship that you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, allies, in my perspective, are people that stand up for and enable, emphasize the inclusion and equity of folks, you know, that may be different than the majority or underrepresented. And that exists at all levels of organization and probably just everywhere around us. And it's about creating a better environment, more opportunities, and that's employees, that's customers, that's partners, that's, you know, offices and our lives. But in my case, it's also within our video games as well. So for my part, you know, I try to be aware of issues and opportunities and encourage that in the team and the folks around me, from holding, you know, monthly team listening sessions, utilizing anonymous feedback channels, you know, leading monthly culture retrospectives to level set how we're doing against our standards and holding ourselves accountable. And ultimately, with all of that, I try to take action, you know, whether it's addressing cultural shortcomings, team concerns, in office or in-game inequities. You know, I take the opportunity to speak, you know, for organizations like this, but within, you know, a diversity and inclusion recruiting pipeline group who tries to recruit from less represented and less privileged groups, other allyship communities. I mentor underrepresented folks from less visible parts of the organization. And ultimately, I just try to gain awareness, be aware, and model inclusiveness and openness.
Thank you, Amanda. All right, and the same question back to Colleen. Do you believe you're an ally? Do you have a story that you'd like to share with us?
You know, being in leadership, and I think the other panels have said that you know, naturally as part of that position, you tend to be an advocate, which to me is close to being an ally. And where you use your credibility and the respect that you've gained to advocate for those that don't have a direct input into strategic decisions. And as such, you use your platform to be an ally for those on your team or a cause that, you know, you're trying to help, not just advocating to those that can affect change, but providing the tools and suggestions, plans, and preparations for those that want to see the change in their lives and the cause that they have. You know, and an example that I have most recently is at the highest levels of our company that I was at, and at the board and C-level, there was a change, pretty big change. And, you know, with that, the facts of that is that that C-level is going to come with their philosophy, their team, and they should, right? They have people that they trust. And so the rest of the team, you know, their numbers, right? Their stats. And so how do you change those stats to something that's qualitative? So, you know, I use my platform to qualitative and quantitative represent my team. So they're not just stats or names on a list. These are people that are part of the team, and how are they important to the team? So I think that, you know, not just providing a platform for others to speak, but also standing up for them when they're not in the room to make that decision or where decisions are being made.
Thank you, Colleen. And with that, let's take this slide out and bring the other questions in our discussion today. We are going to latch on to something I heard you all say. There are activities that you all as leaders are setting up to promote mentorship, to promote allyship. But do you think there is a responsibility for people who are seeking mentorship or who are looking for allyship from their end? Is there something they need to do to make that inroad? And I'll probably go with Amanda first. Amanda, do you think there needs to be a responsibility for the person themselves who feels themselves in the underrepresented groups to say, I need to do something to be able to gain this mentorship? to the?
Yeah, I think particularly when it comes to seeking mentorship, it starts with the mentee putting together a list of their goals, their career goals, their objectives, and then sharing that with the mentor or potential mentor. And together they establish the steps towards achieving those goals, objectives to reach. And it does take commitment on both parts, but on the mentee to commit to the meetings and doing the work, whether it's readings or things that they take to do in their career life, coachings, trainings, things like that. They should do that work. And when it comes to responsibility of folks seeking allyship, I think it is about speaking up. See something, feel something, be concerned about something, say something, and hopefully you have a confidant in leadership, or there are ways to play channels, or there's some avenue for you to speak up. But it takes any of us that sees something or thinks there's opportunities to say something.
Thank you. I'd like to take that over to Derek. Do you agree? Or do you have a comment on that question?
Yeah, I think, it's imperative that you be active in it. I think the one challenge that a lot of people have with like a high school education, it's very one way. You sit down, somebody walks in the classroom, and for 45 minutes or an hour, it's just one-way communication. They teach you. I think an error that people have when they initiate either an ask or enter a formalized mentorship program is they expect it'll be something similar to that. The person with more tenure, or whatever it might be, more life experience, is going to walk in the door and you're going to sit there and they're going to impart all this experience to you. And that's not how it works. You have to be able to have some very clear goals when you enter a mentorship relationship. What do you want to get out of it as a mentee? What can this mentor help you to discover? Because it is a discovery, right? It's not, I can tell you exactly what I did to get to my career, but you don't have my lived experiences. So if you you can't follow it directly. So it's important that you bring everything that makes you who you are to the relationship. And that's how you're going to maximize it and actually help your mentor improve. Because you got to meet these people where they are and bring a part of you that, you may not have even known you were going to tap into for this relationship. So it's really important that it's a collaborative process.
Thank you, Derek. Garrett, I feel like you have an opinion to add.
Well, I 100% agree with Amanda and Derek that it's not just a one-way street where you ask for somebody to be your mentor and then you just sit and listen to them espouse philosophy and teach you things, right? Like it's a partnership, and it takes a lot of preparation for those mentorship discussions, right? Like outline your goals, talk to your mentor about what your goals are, prepare with questions, find out sort of details about their background, and ask them questions about their background and how they think through things. I think one of the best ways to think of a mentor is in life, it's always good to set up sort of your own personal board of directors. And as you go through big decisions and think through things, you think through, I want to go to my board and ask them their take, right? So it's an independent voice that can help you with those things. So treat the mentor as a member of your board of directors and go to them with career defining decisions. Go to them with smaller decisions about things you want to do on projects, right? But go prepared. I think that's a huge responsibility that the mentee must embrace. So
I love it. I think that's a great way of thinking about it. I also want to give the opportunity to Colleen to answer the same question. Is there a responsibility from the person themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that they own it, right? I mean, we're the owner of our career, we're the owner of our cause. So I think if you take it from an ownership standpoint, that I'm accountable for this, rather than I'm going to seek help from somebody, because that puts you sort of in a substandard kind of position, that I own this, I'm accountable for this is what I want, that your perception changes, right? And the other thing, everybody's had such great input, but one thing is to maybe think about finding somebody who maybe dissented on an opinion that you have, right? And seek input from them. Why do they have that perspective? You may not end up having the same perspective, but when you understand, dissent, and you understand someone with an opposite thought from you, it adds to knowledge, right? And it may be something that, okay, I still don't like it, but I can prepare for that in my future. So, in IT, it's always good, especially with clients, we always want to change the people of the minds that don't trust us, right? I come from a consulting background. How do I get the person that doesn't trust me into my camp? Because then he's going to be my champion. So find even, people that are like-minded with you. Garrett said your board of directors that are going in the same path that you like, but also somebody that maybe is opposite to what you think. And, you might even get a friend.
I love it. I want to ask the question from a person's point of view who's looking for that help. Yes, I have that pitch prepared for my possible mentor. But how do I go finding that mentor? How do I build the channels or the networks to be able to find someone who I can say is my mentor, is my ally, who's going to help me move forward? And this is a question open to anyone, and please feel free to speak up.
I would say start where you are. Probably the first person closest to you is your supervisor, right? You start there. And you may ask that person a question. And then Garrett said, ask them their background. Everybody says, ask them their background, and that might lead you to somebody else. But anything, start right where you are. Maybe even if you're, in school still, right? You can go to a professor or a friend that you have. But start closest to the person that you have that you're a little bit more comfortable with. And then that can open up paths elsewhere.
Garrett?
Yeah, I think that's good advice. I think there are a lot of people that you may overlook that are in your close proximity that can provide you with a lot of, and they know you well, right? And they can help guide you. I think I would also consider sort of you look at your, we all sort of sometimes take a step back and go, where do I want to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now, right? And look out in your network for somebody that you see as a role model that you would want to emulate, and be like, well, I'm really, that's where I want to be in 10 years, right? And reach out to that person and request, right? And sometimes people are busy and they can't take on, maybe it's just not a good fit or whatnot, but be prepared to not always get accepted as a mentee, but also I would say look at role models and reach out to those people and ask for their help as a mentor. And then on top of that, I would say that most forward-leaning organizations these days are setting up these types of programs, right? So for goodness sake, like if there's one set up at your company, participate.
Yes.
But I hear a lot of folks talk about their career and limitations and that type of thing. And there's a mentorship program at my work, right? And I sometimes ask, why are you not participating in that process, right? Because that's certainly going to help with your career growth. So definitely agree with Colleen. Look at folks in your proximity, but then also look at sort of who you look at as a role model, and then also participate in programs that your school or your organization that you work for has set up.
Great. Amanda, would you have a comment on any tips or tricks to, build more networks, build more paths towards mentorship?
Yeah, I really like what Colleen and Garrett have said. sometimes as much mentorship as I do for my directs or even skip levels with people on their team, I am still kind of in the supervisory funnel for them, and things can be a little tricky there. So some opportunities that I've seen, someone will come to me and we'll talk about what their goals are. And maybe they're, hey, I want to learn more about this side of the business, or I want to learn what they're doing because I want to round out how I contribute or my sphere of influence. And, then coming to me or coming and talking to their manager, we can find somebody that fits that. So, it does, to Colleen's point, start with who's closest to you, and then it can evolve from there.
Thank you. I also want to give the opportunity to Colleen to answer the same question. Do you believe there is a way we can improve our networks and find more mentors, possibly outside our direct sphere of engagement?
Yeah, and I'm not sure if you meant me or Derek, but I would say, other than where you start, where you are, is to look in unusual places, right? I go to the gym, right? Is there somebody there that that you admire there, right? Or if you belong to any sort of religious organization, or just your neighbor, right? Maybe look in unusual places that you see somebody and they probably have seen you before, that you can strike up a conversation with. You may get just different perspectives from outside of your own cause or your own professional goals that you have, but the things that they're doing in their lives can transcend to how you want to operate in whatever the causes that you have for yourself or the group that you belong to.
Thank you. And apologies, Derek, if I missed a cue to have you speak.
That's all right. Colleen stole my thunder there. I totally agree with her. I was going to say practice makes permanent. Perfect practice makes perfect, right? And you can't practice too much on these skills that you need. And where am I going with that? Well, yeah, sometimes practicing that relationship with people that you're already comfortable with, right? Maybe your parents, maybe somebody, a friend, maybe somebody that's a year older than you, right? And then also practice the other side. Practice being a mentor yourself, and then feel what it's like to have that relationship. And they'll probably help you. Well, not probably, it'll definitely help you when you're on the other side of the table acting as a mentee, because you'll know what you expected from that person who was coming to you for advice or guidance, and you'll be better prepared to fulfill the role as a mentee.
Thank you. Thank you. To all the viewers on this session today, please feel free to add any questions that you may want to get into. My next question is a little bit close to my heart. This is about women in technology. So I want to be specific about being a woman in a sphere that may not have too many women around me. So there may be some of us who say, we don't need allyship. We are good enough. Our day-to-day, our environment today in 2023 allows us to feel like we're no longer an underrepresented group. Whereas there could be some others, they say, things haven't changed much. We're not too different or far away from where it was really hard to find a single woman in that industry. I'd like to ask the question to let's say, Garrett, I'll go with you. Do you think women need allies?
So I think, speaking in general terms, broad terms, I'd say yes. I think everyone needs allies, right? And if you look at statistics, anywhere from, depending on where you look, 15 to 25% of senior leadership positions within technology are filled by women, right? And so the balance, obviously, being an underrepresented group, that means that when you're in senior leader, the room with other senior leaders, usually you're in the minority, right? And as in that situation, there are the men in that room will certainly have unconscious biases, right? Some of them may have conscious biases, unfortunately, but they'll certainly be unconscious biases as well, right? And so, in order to overcome, I think, the obstacles that those create in terms of creating opportunity, in terms of driving more equitable participation, I think that it's really important for men to recognize this unconscious bias that may exist and overtly reach out and build allies with women across the organization, right? So that that network gets created for them and opportunity results from that. Now, having said that, there's also a benefit that goes the other way, right? From my point of view, and I spoke about this at the very beginning of the call, there's you won't be as successful if you have a limited number of perspectives looking at the problems that you're trying to solve, right? And you need to include everybody's voice and everyone's eyes on that issue. And if you, due to your unconscious bias, limit that, right, you're not going to be as successful in what you're doing. So you have to consciously reach out and pull in other perspectives and other viewpoints, and part of, I know for myself, doing that is reaching out and reaching out to folks that are not like me, right, and building those relationships and building those allyships, right? So I think that's definitely can a woman rise to the top and be successful without creating allies? Sure, no doubt about it. But if we look at statistics and look at the facts, in order to overcome the underrepresentation of women in senior leadership positions, this is something that we have to remove unconscious biases within our workplace. And one way of doing that is building these partnerships and building these allyships and having everyone reach out to underrepresented groups and get everyone's perspective on things.
Thank you. I'd also like to take a woman's take on it. So Colleen, what would you say?
I would say yes, and I agree wholeheartedly with Garrett. One of the things that is interesting is that, his point of just for yourself, right, of getting different perspectives. And, whether it's a woman's perspective or however you identify yourself, you just come with a perspective just based on who you are, just period, right? Without whatever the experience may be. You can be looking at the same thing and you're going to have a different perspective than somebody else, just based primarily how you identify yourself or your experiences. So yes, it's vital. And it's vital for inclusion. I mean, that's what allyship is about, right? Underrepresented, allying for underrepresented groups, but they bring, based on being underrepresented, a different perspective themselves. So I agree exactly with what Garrett said.
Thank you. I'd like to turn the tables around. Let's say there are a lot of people on this call today who are not just wondering how to gain allies, but to become allies. So for those folks, I'd like to, ask this panel, and starting with Amanda, maybe, how do you become an ally?
I think I kind of hit on this at the beginning. It starts with education, building awareness. Garrett hit on this. Understanding the impact of lack of inclusion, lack of equity on underrepresented groups, understanding biases, and then just understanding the significant opportunity that's provided by diversity within an organization and being open to feedback. And take responsibility for yourself, for your own attitudes, your own prejudices, your own biases, and your own behaviors. And I think you can break ground anywhere with some pretty light lift things to drive, inclusion and awareness and improvements in the workplace and the work product. And that could be as simple as being a confidant, see something, say something, host group lunches, try to build communities, hold listening sessions, start anonymous feedback channels. There's tons of free ones like Suggestion Box out there. Create open discussion forums and channels. Take on more, marginalized or underrepresented mentees, create leaning groups. There's so many things. And then for a next level, putting in the effort towards systematic improvements in policies, hiring other practices, creating an inclusive culture and values at an organization or within your team, leveling that up to each level of senior leadership, being a voice for pay equity or, work product representativeness. And then just encouraging others around you, other colleagues, other senior leaders. That's going to have the broadest and most consistent impact.
Thank you, Amanda. There's a question in the chat from Jeff Reber that I think is in direct relationship with what we were just talking about, which is, are there any tips to be a better ally? Thinking about creating safe spaces or open channels, given the discussion of having a board of people with diverse backgrounds. And this question is open to anyone on the panel if they'd like to take it up.
I'll take a stab at it. Start small.
Go ahead.
Right.
Start small.
Just start small. Nobody's going to be great at it their first time through. And I know that we're talking a lot like in the corporate arena, but there are entrepreneurs out there who have opportunities to be allies. I mean, everybody here graduated from at least high school. And so there's opportunities there to reach back into your network, right? Into your personal network and volunteer to help somebody. It's not that hard. With practice, everybody gets better at it. And there's a ton of people out there who might look for some assistance from somebody, but don't even know how to start. And just by raising your hand and saying, I'm here and I'd be willing to, maybe be an ally to somebody in your school, your alma mater. That's a very simple and safe way to start, even if you don't belong in corporate America with our infrastructure here. And if you are in corporate America, same thing, raise your hand. You'd be surprised how many people are like, oh, fantastic, we're looking for somebody like you.
I think that maybe like organizations that do that, nonprofits, maybe even professional organizations, like Garrett said, Fox has one, right? I think that they would welcome people asking, hey, can you help me be a better ally? And they probably have the tools and the resources, reading material, classes to give to you. So you can also go the formal route of, Googling it, but find organizations that do that for a living and volunteer or ask them for resources to get that done.
And I'd like to say that is actually one of a possible answer to another question that came in the chat from Nicole Moulton. Do you have any, we've talked about preparations for mentees, but is there any kind of preparation for a mentor? What should they do in advance? That's a great tip. And Garrett, do you have any others to add?
Yeah, I think one of the big responsibilities of a mentor, there's many responsibilities, but one of the big things that sometimes gets overlooked is introduce your mentee to other people within the organization who they may not naturally be able to meet with, right? When I have a mentor or mentee relationship, I will bring in a senior leader to meet with that person, so they build a connection. That's sort of the goal here, right? Is to give this person an opportunity to meet other people that maybe they may not have been able to meet working in the normal course of their career, right? And that opens up opportunity inherently, right? And I've seen it many times where, so I think that, like, as a mentor, I'd put that on my checklist. Who have I not introduced my mentee to lately, right? Is something that I think about regularly. And then to the point of the mentee being prepared with questions, I like to prepare as well, right? What did they tell me last time? What were their goals? What books have I read? What seminars, podcasts have I listened to? Right? Like there's a million things like that make a list, and then when you're in that conversation, you come out of that meeting that you were frustrated by, and don't have time for this mentee meeting right now. You have a list, you go to it, and you start off on the right foot, right? Because you've thought about it over time. So
right. Thank you. I'm trying to look at the time. Look at how quickly time goes when you're talking about something interesting. I'd like to ask another question. This is also very relevant to the age we're in, the post-COVID world, where we're all in some state or the other, not actually in person. Case in point, this virtual event is happening where we're not all together, and yet we're having this discussion. So does that change the way we would look out for mentorship and allyship? How do we build alliances in this new remote world? I'm not going to be in office in all the time, but I really still want to do better in my professional organization. So what would you say to those folks who are looking to build those connections in remotely? I'll start with Derek.
I'd say you have to be very, very intentional about it. One thing that we learned when we went remote was that the meeting after the meeting, it was no longer happening. Yeah, and we had to find ways to recreate that organic idea session that happened after meetings and the walk back down the hall. And since that's not happening, nor are the chances to meet people and speak with them over, whether it's the pantry or in a cross-functional meeting. And so you have to be very intentional about reaching out to your leadership to find out who would be, again, though, you have to have a goal. You can't just say, like, I hope I get to meet somebody, right? You have to have a goal. That goal doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be anything large. It could be like, hey, I just want to meet people within the organization that share similar interests, right? And you can start from there, eventually maturing that relationship into something that will be development in nature. But you have to be able to find those people with whom you feel comfortable sharing. And again, probably helpful if you start with somebody who has some similar interests, mature those relationships, and move forward from there. But it's got to be intentional.
I know this is a topic that's close to a lot of people's heart. I do want to open up to any other panelist who wants to answer the same question. Do they have a different take on it?
I agree with Derek that it's hard, right? You don't have the water cooler discussion, so it's got to be intentional, and you can do some casual things, right? Even though it may seem flippant or it may seem trite, right? That with your team member, you just have to do it, right? Sometimes we put in our timesheets, and we'll put in our timesheets together, right? So, and you get on camera. But one thing that I want to say that it's vitally important, because just this meeting today was an hour long, and the access that it provided for people, especially underrepresented people, they can't take off a 4-hour afternoon to go to a panel in person, or even in the evening, right? So, doing things online has just provided so much more access to underrepresented people that they're able to attend these things, and they don't have to risk losing a job or childcare, the realities of life. So I think that we need to try and keep, as much as we can, the ability for remote meetings or remote work, just to provide this level of access to other people that may not have it otherwise if we go back to meeting in person. So should be enough motivation for me, right? I'm underrepresented a lot, to do my best to keep remote meetings and remote access, at the top of mind of executives, that it's important.
That's a great way to look at it. I agree. Garrett?
This may seem simple, but so I'll just throw it out there, but turn your camera on. When you're working remotely, don't be a black box in the corner with just white script for your name, right? By having your camera on and leaning in and engaging in the conversation, I think that makes a difference. It's exactly what Colleen and Derek said. Being intentional about reaching out to people, I think is critical as well. But I think thirdly, you got to we're in this remote world, but when you have the opportunity to meet in person, take it, right? If there's going to be a larger meeting, go into the office for that meeting and meet with folks, because those relationships are hard. Let's face it, hard to develop over Zoom. And it's not impossible, but the first step on Zoom is to turn your camera on, I would say. So
I agree. I can't help but ask Amanda the same question. In your background, the gaming world, things are getting more and more virtual. Do you think we should agree to go embrace the virtual world, or is there still room for us to say no? There's value in being in face to face.
It's both. It's flexibility and then try to enhance it where we can. Analytics industry, especially in video games, is it's very competitive. And so we may have the right candidate who's just not local, and that's going to need to be okay. But we set expectations. And I totally agree with Garrett. I wasn't demanding about this, but I dialogued with the team, and majority thought team meetings should be camera on, one-on-one should be camera on. And so we're doing that, and that does help us, especially those that are not in person, because a lot of us are back in the office in Santa Monica. We're staying closer. And then to the point about being intentional, even face to face, sometimes people struggle a little bit with being open. So, I will do this for every single of the 30 some odd people on my team at whatever level. I reach out on Slack and I just say, I want to check in. I want to see how you're doing, what's going on. How do you think the team's doing? How do you think things are going? And I just really open it up for discussion. And a lot of times I get paragraphs upon paragraphs of ideas and thoughts. And it's a way to let them know I'm there, model that leadership for my leaders, create that openness, create that awareness, be that confidant. And, it's just that way of showing intention. So, there's balance with in-person and Zoom, and there's going to be certainly for us, and still lots of opportunities with virtual.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm going to do a quick check for chat questions, and we've got one big one to answer. We've talked about allyship, mentorship, creating growth patterns in both virtually and in face-to-face. But I think it all boils down to how can we help empower people around us? And so I'll go to the crux of the question. How do we do that? How do we empower others? Garrett?
I think that it's very important, if you're in a position to empower others, right, to recognize that everybody has a different background, everybody has a different path through life, right? And you have to mine different perspectives from the people that you work with, right? And there's going to be introverts and extroverts. Extroverts are easier, they'll just throw it at you, but there's introverts out there. You have to go in and ask that person, what is your take on that? Pull people out of you don't have to do it in a 100-person meeting, but you can go get that person and get different perspectives across the organization. You're going to be a better leader, obviously, by getting those different perspectives, but I think it will also empower people, right, to recognize that their thoughts on a matter, while maybe unique, are valuable, and they don't need to keep it to themselves, right? So I think sort of getting people out of their shell and reaching out and sort of pulling opinions out of folks getting them to weigh in on topics. Overall, people need to weigh in to buy in on anything, right? And so the more you engage people and have them offer their opinion on things, I think that's an empowering topic. And then I like I said, I think making those introductions is important as well, right? If you see somebody in one part of the organization that can benefit from talking to another, build that bridge, make that connection, because I think that'll empower people in their careers.
Thank you. Same question to you, Amanda.
I totally agree with Garrett. You have to build the trust, you have to grow awareness, and that really comes from asking and being really open to feedback. There's a considerable difference in how leaders are viewed and what they know and what they can do to improve their organization, between those that open up the dialogue and listen, and those that don't take that initiative and just assume they know. We know what happens when we do that. And then I think you have to follow up. If you hear about issues, if you see opportunities, if you see someone that's underengaged, you support, you become available, you offer guidance. Make sure we're showing appreciation for folks, and when there's opportunities, be constructive about it and make feedback no big deal.
Thank you. Derek? We'll wait. We'll come back to you. So let's go with Colleen.
All that time,
Oh,
I couldn't unmute myself for some reason.
Okay.
All that time.
Go ahead.
I think what Garrett said is spot on. I just think it's really important that you create an environment, a collaborative environment. I've worked in environments where it's very dog eat dog, right, and very sharp elbowed, and that's okay. Within your team, you can create a very open, collaborative space, even while you're competing real hard against the other team that is in the same building. Like where I am now, where we pride ourselves on our collaborative nature, and so I feel like it might be a little bit easier here, but you got to make sure that you are approachable, right, and that people know, even if it's only within your team. When your team talks, and when they're out there, they say, "Oh, I went to Derek with X, Y, or Z, so maybe you talk to him as well." It's not immediate, and so if you expect it to be so, I feel like you're going to be disappointed. But over time, things do come about, and that's how you create that open dialogue.
Thank you. I'd like to close this out, but not before I give Colleen a chance to respond to the same question. How do we empower others?
I really resonated with what Amanda said about following up, follow up and follow through, right? You create that space where people can talk, but it's not just empty words. You take a suggestion, you follow through with it, and then you give people ownership of that, right? Like commend them, like say, this person had this idea and we went with it. And so they feel like my opinion matters. You create a safe space for their success. And then also their ownership of it. Yeah, sometimes it may fail, but you take that on, right? And in group, you may right size that, but give them the credit, right? Follow up, follow through, let people know about them. And that now they feel like they're empowered, right? When they know that they have some ownership in this, whatever this cause is that you're pushing for.
Thank you. Thank you, all of you, for all your guidance and tips and tricks. And, I'm sure if being on both sides of trying to find an ally, trying to find a mentor, being a mentor or being an ally, I think all of us took away something that we can take back to our world. I hope for all of you who are here on the virtual Zoom chat, you enjoy the chat that's going on the side. Loved it, all the tips that are coming in. And I hope we can do this again. With that, thank you. I will hand it back to Beth to close us out. You're on mute, Beth.
Muted. That's funny. I think we're having dueling mutes, Thomas. So just wanted to, wow, some great themes. I took notes like active, start even if it's, just starting small. It's collaborative, bi-directional, be intentional, follow up, follow through. Wonderful, wonderful conversation. Great practical suggestions that we can walk with and take back to our lives this afternoon. So thank you, Vishaki, and all of our panelists. I want to talk about some upcoming events that we have. We have our summer solstice coming up on June 14th. It's going to be talking about societal impacts of technology innovation. That's been in sort of AI, generative AI, what's happening with technology and how it's impacting our lives. And then coming up in September, we have our Executive Leadership Awards. Super excited to have that again at the annual event. Well attended. Love to have you all join us. And I'm going to pass it to Thomas for one more. Thank you all for joining us today.
Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate being here and all the fantastic comments and insights from all the panelists. And thank you, Beth and Teresa, for helping to curate the content and get all these speakers here. One last announcement is that for CIOs and other leaders on the call, I'll put in the chat here, we have the Southern California Executive CIO Summit. That's going to be on Tuesday, May 23rd at the Renaissance Long Beach. You're going to love being there. A lot of great sessions on generative AI, machine learning, other areas like that. So please do join us. And I do have some calls to action for you as well, that I'll put in the chat here. But I think I heard turn on your camera, be intentional about reaching out to people and gaining allies, introducing mentees. I love the comment from Garrett on creating your own personal board of directors. And then finally, please join us, get engaged, follow us on LinkedIn, and we'll be promoting our upcoming events that Beth just covered as well.